Ice water turn Atlantic. Night calling in a phantom. Told them, hold it, don't you panic. Took an island, fled the mansion. Drop the roof, more expansion. Drive a coupe, you can stand it. Bitches undercover. I'm an ass.
Welcome back. It's been a long hiatus since my last video, which was about, applying to schools and how to choose schools to apply to. And I'm quite aware that many people that might have started watching my YouTube and following my Facebook have probably, maybe most of you have submitted your applications. So for that, I apologize because I really wanted to get this particular video out earlier, but alas, this magical thing called law school happened. And that's just the long and short of it. But first and foremost, I just wanted to thank everyone who's watched it, who's reached out to me, messaged me, and told me how these videos have benefited y'all. I'm just so enormously grateful to hear everybody's individual stories and to have one-on-one conversations with people through this channel. So it's been immensely rewarding for me to be able to give back and hear about amazing students of color that are applying to law school. So without further ado, I just wanted to jump right into this video, which is about personal statements, diversity essays, and scholarship essays. So all the essays. I think that with law school essays for admissions, one of two things happen. Either one, people suddenly forget that they've been writing essays their whole life, and they think this is just some onerous task that, is just so hard to even begin, which I kind of fell a little bit into that camp. Or two, people don't take it as seriously because they put all their energy and effort into the LSAT and they forget these essays matter. I'm gonna say that one more time. Okay. Because I feel like there's this misconception that the essay, your resume, your letters of recommendation are the softs and your GPA and your LSAT score and GRE are the hards, and I just don't really agree with that dichotomy because I know in my case I believe that I got into schools I got into based on my essays, point blank, because when I started interviews or even when I went to admitted students days, people remembered me because of my essay. They literally remembered my essay immediately as soon as I said my name. I just think that essays are something that are often not really paid as close attention to as they should, and so I decided to make this video. So first off, your main personal statement, your main essay. So there's not one strict formula, obviously, for how to write an essay. But I would say getting started is usually the hardest part. So what I did is I literally let the process come naturally to me instead of stressing about things. When I would go into the shower, I would be thinking about it. So I would come out of the shower and I had a note on my phone and I would just put random ideas that came to me, in the shower, going on the train, random bits and pieces of things that I wanted to include in my essays, verbs, sentences, stories. It just had everything, all the ideas that I had. So one thing I would say about your personal statement is to have a strong hook in the beginning. Because put yourself in the mentality of someone who's reading thousands upon thousands of essays. This is not your first time applying to something. You've applied to undergrad. You've applied to internships, perhaps jobs, volunteer positions. You've applied to things before. And as you know, you need to grab the attention of the person who's reading these essays. So for me, I started my essay, my first paragraph, in the middle of a story. Literally, the first word of my essay was kidnapped. What? So when you hear that word, you're like, what? You're flipping through. It's I don't know, kidnap? What? And so I wanted to grab someone's attention, and I started off in the middle of a kidnapping that occurred. And that immediately, drew the reader in. I'm not saying you have to start off with some kind of kidnapping, but just start off using some kind of device that will just draw your reader in and want to even care about what you're saying. Now, I know I found out kind of after the fact through reading more personal statements that many people use one personal statement. They change maybe one sentence and that's it. I didn't really do that. My personal statement was the same for the first two paragraphs, but my last paragraph for every school was actually, no, sorry. My first paragraph was the same for every school. However, my second paragraph was was halfway tailored to the individual school. And then my third paragraph as well was kind of tailored to the individual school. So I didn't really have one staple, this is why I want to be a lawyer, and I sent that out to every school. Like, no, because for me, I thought my scores were my weakness, so I put a lot of time and effort into my essays. I had at least eight people heavily edit my essays, and I went through at least 5 different versions of my personal statement. Not talking about diversity essays, not talking about no scholarship essays, just my personal statement. I think one thing that's helpful is reading people's personal statements to kind of just get a sense of like, okay, what do people talk about? What are some experiences that people have had that they've talked about that I might have similar experiences? However, don't fall into the trap of having this mentality of like, I'm going to give them what they want. And this is something that is really serious for me. As minority students applying to these institutions, oftentimes we feel the need to kind of pimp out our pain and whatever challenges or obstacles you've had to come that may or may not be tied to your identity as a student of color. Oftentimes we feel like we need to put that pain on display for consumption in order to gain acceptance to these schools. And I personally don't think that's the true necessarily. If something painful or traumatic happened to you, shaped why you want to go to law school, then by all means, talk about it. But if it didn't,
stop it. Get some help.
Don't talk about it. like it's not by force. But with me, you know, I talked about a family experience, like of my family, you know, dealing with the lack of accountability in the Nigerian justice system for various crimes and corrupt abuses. And then that was my first paragraph. I transitioned then. My second paragraph was from that to how my college experiences and post-college experiences aligned with forming my passion for international human rights, because I want to do international human rights law. Then the second part of my second paragraph and my third paragraph dealt with the specific school. And I felt like this is a way for me to showcase, like, no, I'm not just sending you a generic personal statement. I have researched your school. I have put in the work. I've put in the time. I've put in the effort. And intentionally chosen your school for a reason. So let's say, for instance, Georgetown. I applied to Georgetown. I researched, okay, Georgetown has this human rights clinic, this international law program that I would love to be in. These classes, I looked at professors. I'm like, this professor I would love to do research with. This professor I would love to mentor me. These are what are unique. This is what is unique about Georgetown's human rights clinic as opposed to other human rights clinics at other law schools. And so I put that just like generally into the middle part of my essay. Then my final concluding paragraph was more about the future, my plans for the future, what I like actually aspired to be, the type of lawyer I aspired to be, and type of change I aspired to make, and then how, you know, getting into XYZ school would be, you know, the key to unlocking that journey or whatever. So that was the format that I used. You do not, by any stretch of the imagination, by any means, you need to use this. It's not a formula. There's no formula to writing your personal statement. I would say just make sure that it's genuine to you. Make sure that you're telling a story that is memorable. And make sure that when someone is done reading your essay, they have seen you in a light that is completely different from everything else on your application. You have put things in there that they would not know if it were not. So don't regurgitate your resume. They have your resume. They have letters of recommendation. They have your transcripts. They know what classes you've taken. Show them something that who is UD Namdi as a person? And how is this essay allowing me to know her better and why she wants to come to law school? So I don't know, that's helpful. That's just my general approach to personal statements. I would say give it to your aunties, your mamas, your cousins, because give it to people who have no relationship to law and see if they can stay awake for your essay. If people's eyes glaze over that are not in the legal field and they're reading your essay is trash. Damn! And you need to start from scratch because you want it to be an engaging essay. Another big tidbit is that you've written essays for classes before. You've written essays for applications before. I took bits and pieces of my essay because I had applied to grad school prior to law school to a master's program. I definitely stole sentences from that essay and put it in this essay. And I would say the same for any other essays that you just really like and you like the way you said something. You can't plagiarize from yourself. So don't reinvent the wheel. If you have an essay with pieces that you think are just really great and showcase who you are and you want to have that in your personal statement, copy paste. Just make sure that you have many different types of people giving your essay a thorough, critical look. I'm not just talking about typos. I'm talking about flow. I'm talking about word choice. I'm talking about smooth transitions. Like, this needs to be the best essay you've ever written in your entire life. And by the time you submit that, you need to be proud of that essay. It's not just like oh yeah, I did my essay and submit. No, like, this essay is you in essay form. Now, with diversity essays or supplemental essays or optional essays, whatever the school likes to call it, I've had the question, multiple people have asked me, like, do you feel like it's necessary to submit a diversity essay? To which I'm like, yeah, duh, it's necessary. With someone, again, I keep going back to, my scores were not, like, superbly high. So someone like me, or someone like most people that are even if your scores are high, that's another opportunity to convince these law schools why they need you. So yes, do the diversity optional supplemental essays. Do them. Why would you not do them? I just don't understand the reasoning for why not to do them. Now, how do you differentiate your personal statement from, like, an optional diversity essay? What is diversity? What aspect of diversity should you put on display? So I know for me, this was difficult for me to even grab my head around, because I was like, I'm a woman, I'm black, I am black, I'm Nigerian American, second generation, black, I'm from Jersey, I'm from Ohio, I've lived everywhere, I'm black, I've lived in like 7 different places in my life. Chai! What do y'all want from me? So I think it's hard sometimes isolating, okay, how do I want to represent myself as a diverse candidate? And keep in mind, you can also check off boxes if you choose to say that you're African American on some schools' applications, or, identify your racial background or your gender background, whatever gender you are. So I had struggled with, like, what element of my diversity do I talk about them all? Like, and how do I put that in a way that doesn't seem like disingenuous? Like, how do I talk about my diversity? I actually personally loved my diversity essay more than my personal statement, because I don't know when it hit me. I think I was speaking to a student at NYU, and he was like, yeah, oh, it's so nice to hear you're from Howard. There's so few people from HBCUs and law schools, and I'm from Morehouse, and there's so few of us. And it hit me, like, going to an HBCU at these elite institutions is a form of diversity. And you can see that in some schools, like Yale Law School, I know, had like a whole webinar only for HBCU students. And so these schools are actively recruiting for HBCU students. So that's just an aside. But I was like, oh, that's it. Because at first I was going to write a essay about my mother and my grandmother and strong mothers in my life, and how I felt like I've been raised by strong women, and, how that's influenced me. Because I just didn't want it to be generic. However, my essay ended up being about me transferring from a predominantly white institution during college to a HBCU. And it wasn't just about me transferring, but more so how transferring to an HBCU and being in that environment planted the seeds for me to become a student advocate. And I talked about my student advocacy, being involved in a particular campaign at my school, and I later transition that to how it's important to me to stay within institutions that uplift the voices of marginalized communities, and also how being in such spaces allows me to be the best type of advocate that I want to be. And so being in an institution like fill in name of institution will allow me to become a strong legal advocate, because I know they have like intellectual diversity, and they, cherish the voices of, Black and brown students, Whether or not that is the case when you actually show up at that door, that's a conversation for another day. But that's what my essay was about. I would say with the diversity essay, just think about, stop thinking about what do these schools want, and just think about, who am I? Like, that was me being I went to Howard University. That's a big part of who I am. So I realized, like, yeah, it says that on my, like, transcript, but, like, do you really know about Howard? Let me tell you something about Howard. So, you know, like, I felt like that was a cool way of me displaying my diversity instead of being like, I'm a woman, I'm black, choose me. Look, I just something about the diversity essay makes people uncomfortable, and I understand that. But I think diversity can mean anything. Diversity can mean you lived abroad. Diversity can mean you come from a lower socioeconomic background. Diversity can mean you speak 5 different languages. Because, listen, some of the most interesting people fill out diversity essays, and you're like, what's your diversity? And then you find out it's something completely that you would have never even thought of. So I would definitely say think outside the box, for sure. And yeah, that's all the thoughts I have about my diversity essay. Same rules apply from the personal statement. Make it engaging. I remember my diversity essay began with me talking about like 103 Twitter notifications. I think that was the first sentence of my diversity essay. And then I talked about waking up groggily on my friend's floor. And then it transitioned into how did I get there? So I think that I enjoy writing, and I know that that's one of my strengths, and so I really play that up in my application. But if writing is not one of your strengths, I mean, it should be if you're going to law school, perhaps, but if it's not, then I would definitely say you just have to, like, get people to edit, like, and don't be sensitive. Just get people to rip apart your paper. Like, I remember I thought my personal statement was done, perfect, perfection, just crown me. My essay is gold. And then I gave it to one of my recommenders who wanted it to see it while writing her recommendation, and she was like, oh, no.
Oh, somebody, he needs some milk.
I was like, I'm sorry, come again? She was like, nope. I'm gonna need you to change this whole paragraph, talk about how you learned what you learned from this position. I don't feel like that's on display in your personal statement. And at first I was like, man, I'm just gonna submit what I'm gonna submit. And then actually I thought about it and I was like, you know what, you're right. I've been out of school for 2 years and I don't think that I've adequately shown what it is I did in this position and how it links back and how it's changed my career goals. And so after taking her advice begrudgingly, it made my essay 10 times better. So just be open to criticism. Have people who are actually in law school also edit your essays, people who've been through the process. And then on a final note, I would just talk about briefly scholarship essays. I can't really go into detail because most scholarship essays have their own unique prompt and everything. So I would just say for scholarship essays, the big thing is to look into whether that essay needs to be submitted with your initial application, or upon acceptance, you can then apply to specific scholarships, because every school differs. And I know people miss out on opportunities because they don't realize there's a wealth of scholarships, merit-based scholarships at different schools like NYU and American, where you have to apply with your application. And then if you're accepted, they then immediately look at your scholarship essay, rather than you waiting to get accepted and then starting to look for scholarships. You've already lost. You're already too late. So I would just say keep that in mind. And with scholarship essays, just apply the same rules. Have people edit, be interesting, be engaging, tell a story, and show them something new. So that's all I got for today. Next video, I'll go a little bit into resumes and letters of recommendation. And, you know, best of luck for those who have already submitted their applications and for those who are applying the cycle. And I hope that these videos continue to be beneficial to y'all. So see y'all.